series has been so challenging, this idea of battling busyness, because it's opened ways in our lives that are not reflective of the life of Jesus. And we've looked at practices that have challenged us to continue in that effort of living a transformed life, of growing more into his likeness. And we've had homework. And you thought that maybe on the last week he wouldn't check the homework. You thought that maybe he'd be too demoralized that no one puts their hand up any week, right? So we've looked at 3 practices where we can engage in battling busyness to encounter God in greater ways. We've looked at Sabbath, haven't we? One day a week to pause working to live and to actually worship God through celebrating life, through enjoying the life that he's given us to live. We looked at simplicity, didn't we? Living simply as an act of casting down possessions and money to make our lives more simple in an effort to put God in his place. And last week we looked at silence and solitude, right? Regular, in an ideal world, daily times of what, as Jesus did, retreating to the eremos, to the silence and the solitude, to be alone with God and to be refreshed by the Spirit of God so that we can carry on in this crazy world. So there's 3 things and they're all lumped together. So in the last 7 days, who has had a chance to engage in some homework in one or all of those practices? Put your hand up. Praise the Lord. Right? Who didn't put their hand up? Who wants to? Who's brave enough? Who's brave enough if in the last 7 days you didn't engage in any of these practices? Who's brave enough to tell me why? Anyone want to come up? Well, you're all, yeah? You've just had a horrible week. That's life, right? That's life. Next week will be better. That's it, right? It's a continual transformation, right? The following week we try again. The following week we try again. And we keep coming back to the cross. So we've had a lot of tools for tackling busyness. I know it's been a really busy service, but I just want to finish with a few brief ideas from this book that I've been exploring with us, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. These first 3 practices have been quite definitive and specific and quite a challenge, as evidenced by the homework, right? But I want to draw out one more practice, maybe that could be a little bit more natural, a little bit more daily for us, that can help us encounter God's purposes and encounter his Spirit everywhere we go. So we start with the problem, right? The world is fast. Driving is a classic example, right? You've got to think back 150 years ago, I was just a lad. And we rode around on horse and cart. And then one day someone decided that's not fast enough. We could get somewhere quicker, so we built a car, right? And then the cars weren't fast enough, so we made them faster. And then there were so many people that had their cars that we had to make better roads and we had to make wider roads. And we all know that we live in an endless pursuit of more efficient means of transportation, which basically just means more road cones, right? It's really how we live our life. But I want you to dial your head back to that for a minute, because it's great. It's a phenomenal change to our world, right? To travel to interconnectedness. But think about the effects of what that speeding up has done. Who remembers a time before the Waikato Expressway existed? Right? Yes, I'm old enough to remember. Old enough to remember driving down State Highway 1 through Huntly, right? And the smokestacks. And you get to Huntly, and it was a little bit of a buzz, right? They had a Decker. I was pretty stoked they had a Decker. Who remembers Decker? Right? I am old, okay? Right? They had a Decker, and it was this great little pumping town. Who's been to Huntly in the past few years? Let me rephrase the question. Who's been through Huntly in the past few years? Almost none of us, right? Unless it happens to be on the way. Huntly's a ghost town. But the town's just changed dramatically because we've, in the interest of speed and efficiency, we've built a new road and now we've bypassed. And that's great. We get where we want to go faster, but what's it done for Huntley? Right? The convenience of a faster pace and less wasted time is great, but the consequences of that pace are everywhere. Fast food is great. Great, I can get food fast when I need it if I'm in a rush. But it's not good food, right? No one's life is better because of McDonald's cheeseburgers. And if it is, right, exactly, you're sad. Like, man, come on. Self-checkouts, right? I sound like an old person now, don't I, right? They're highly convenient, they're faster, there's no need to deal with that annoying person who got everything that they thought they needed and then they forgot, so they're halfway, then they have to go back and they get it, and then, oh, where's my card? Oh, can you just wait? I'll go out. Like, right? We don't have to deal with any of that. Yeah, exactly. But now, because we have our self-checkouts, what have we lost? Any ability to relate and have community. Any ability to engage with the people in front of us or behind us. Because we're on to the next thing. Beep, 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 swipe, out the door. Don't have to talk to anyone to buy our groceries anymore. Right? Social media, it's amazing to instantly learn about world events, to connect with people who we love, who are far away. It's phenomenal. But is the world more connected because of it? No. Like, not at all, right? The world is more disconnected, more polarized, less able to relate to anyone who doesn't agree with absolutely everything that I agree. Speed and the pace of that it's not the answer. Because as I said in the first week, we're going so fast in the midst of our lives, we barely have a chance to wave at Jesus through the window as we drive by, right? And we're becoming addicted to this pace of life, aren't we? The world runs faster and faster and faster. But it's a massive problem because the pace robs us of being present in our circumstances. If we're moving slow, we can look around. We can look at the beauty as you drive home today, right? It's a gorgeous day. And we get to look. But if you're driving home in an F1 car, you have to look for the next corner, and the next corner, and the next corner. And this is our whole life. We're sitting in a meeting and we're thinking about the next thing that we have to do when this thing is over. We're sitting on our lunch break and we're checking our email to make sure we've got our afternoon planned and we know what we've got to do and where we've got to be. We say thanks to the person who sold us our groceries because it was an empty line and we could actually go through, right? Plus they had some chocolates, so we chose that line instead of the self-checkout, right? But we're doing that, but our minds are already out the door and onto the task that needs accomplishing when we get home. Living fast means we become far less present in the moment to our circumstances. And what happens in that space? I think about my life when I'm living for the next, and then when something grabs me and pulls me back into the present for a moment, right? Like when my child needs a hug, when a coworker is pouring out their heart over their problems in their life, right? We're so disconnected from the now because we're up there that often when we get pulled back into the present, we get frustrated, or we even get angry, right? You ever found that? Those moments, it's like you're in the middle of something, and someone comes to you and you're like, man, can you just leave me alone for 5 minutes so I can get this thing done? And of course, this has a massive impact on our ability to be present with God. We are here. We are physically here. How many of us are already thinking about lunch? And what's got to be done this afternoon? And the fact that the message has already gone on too long, right? We struggle to have quiet times with God because we're there and we're trying to be quiet and our mind's telling us to think about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. We've got to run. I've only got 45 minutes for this and then I've got to be somewhere else. The pace of this world drags us along away from being still and knowing that He is God. And in that we struggle not just to be present with Him, but also with His mission and His purpose for our lives. Because we've got the next thing when an opportunity comes up to pray with a coworker. Is it an opportunity or a 30k an hour detour right? In these moments, it's easy to just try and quickly move on. Okay, right? Say a couple platitudes. Pray very quickly on to the next thing. Because the pace of life is dragging us along, and we miss the opportunity to be present with God and His people and His purposes. Now take this story in John 4. I've got a slide for it. Look at this. This is the story of the woman at the well. I'm not going to read it all, but this is a chance meeting. Because you look there, he had left Judea and was traveling to Galilee. He'd left Auckland and he was traveling to Hamilton. And he had to go through Huntly, through Samaria, because there was no Waikato Expressway, right? Jesus had to go through Samaria. It wasn't the place he was going. He was just passing through. And he was literally sitting around waiting because his disciples had gone on an errand and he has a few minutes to himself. Now, in our day and age, if we ever had a moment like this, what are we doing? Right? Exactly. We're on our phone, right? You all know it. You're sitting and you're waiting and you pull it out and have a quick scroll, right? Or we just have gone and gotten drive-through. Like, come on, disciples, why don't you go to Macca's instead of going down to the cafe, right? Like this is the way it is. But Jesus, being slower and present in that moment, he had an opportunity to share with a woman. And he ends up staying 2 days, right? It's not like 20 minutes. This moment of chance interaction becomes a 2-day detour for him and his disciples. And a heap of people believed because Jesus was present to the moment that he was in. He didn't go there with any intent to preach to the Samaritans. But because he was slow and present, that made him available to see God's Spirit at work. Speed and convenience robs us of being present and available. So what do we do? What do we do to be more present with to God and His purposes? Well, if the world is screaming faster, 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 well, maybe we are called intentionally to be slow, to live slow, to almost protest against the busy way of life. To intentionally choose slower paths as a way of detoxing yourself from the speed and the pace of life. And as an outcome of that, therefore, to be more present to God, more present to Him working in a moment, even when we're not expecting it, even when we're in the middle of something else, because amazing things happen when we can be present in the moment. So John Mark Comer in his book expresses a bunch of ways that we can sort of work out this idea of just living slowly. They can be really easy, perhaps entirely frustrating to us, but here's a few of his ideas. Pick the long line at the supermarket. Who's already squirming in their seat, right? Does that 5 minutes that you're going to save really matter? No. But does it change some of your heart to be a little bit more present? Perhaps you could pay by chip and PIN instead of tap and go, right? Maybe you could turn off the GPS when you're driving. There are signs on the side of the road. You can figure it out, right? Instead of going, oh, well, who does this? I'm sure all men do this. They put the GPS, says the arrival time, 11:57. How many minutes can I beat it by, right? And all the wives are already looking at their husbands because they know they do it, right? Turn the GPS. Who cares if we make it 2 minutes quicker, right? Perhaps you could even, here's one, right? We're out of holiday season. Well, no, it's Easter weekend, right? It's Easter weekend. Some of you will be going away. Maybe you could just stay behind the caravan or the truck. Right? Now, I know this is aggressively uncomfortable for us, and it sounds like a laugh, but we need to intentionally think about changing our approach to everything, of being faster and quicker and better. And if we actually backed up the truck with some really easy but really difficult things to do, might actually change some things. While we're on the driving bandwagon, how about drive the speed limit? If it says 70, how about you drive 68, not 78? right? Then we've got those moments like Jesus at the well where we are just waiting. You've got a doctor's appointment and you know if your doctor's appointment's after 9 o'clock down here, you can show, if say it's at 10 o'clock, you know you can show up at 20 past 10 and you'll be all right? Because they're already so far behind. They're amazing nurses and doctors, but they're so busy, right? How about we show up on time and we put our phones away and we just be present to the moment of the waiting? Just sitting and looking around you. We did it for hundreds of years. That's why they have those magazines and those newspapers there, right? Because people used to actually read them because they had nothing else to do. How about we do something like that? Right? There's 100 ways that phone, right? And that access to the next thing, to the new thing, the ability to multitask, which is just a lie, right? We're not actually multitasking. We're doing something good and something poorly, right? It's just an enemy of being slower and being deliberate and more present. So force yourself to turn the notifications off. Force yourself to not look when it goes bing. Turn everything off except for the ringer, right? People don't need or actually even expect an instant reply. It's what we've come to assume, but most of us don't care if you text me and I don't reply within 30 seconds. And if they do, tell them to catch a break and get a life, right? Give yourself some room. Put the phone down, put it away. Now, I know there are people who would use their phone as an anchor because of social anxiety, and I get that, or learning difficulties. Well, try anyway. Try anyway. When you're doing your quiet time, get a physical Bible out, not a digital one, as a way to just actually slow down. These silly little changes. Try to make the homework easy for you this week, right? But these silly little changes grow a skill in us that we know called patience, right? I have a prayer on my whiteboard in my office, written by Max Lucado, and it sits by my desk, and not as many mornings as I would like, but some mornings I sit there and I pray it as I start work. And it's a prayer through each of the fruits of the Spirit. And this is what Max says for patience. He says, I choose patience. This is how he prays at the beginning of the day. I choose patience. I will overlook the inconveniences of the world. Instead of cursing the one who takes my place, I will invite him to do so. Rather than complaining that the wait is too long, I will thank God for a moment to pray. Instead of clenching my fists at new assignments, I will face them with joy and with courage. I can read these words, and this is just the antithesis of everything with which we live by. But being slow like this, being patient, challenges us to be more present in every area of our lives, which allows us to be more aware of the world around us, both the physical one and the spiritual one. And so that person in the store struggling with their 4 kids and on the verge of tears no longer becomes a frustration. How come you can't be a better parent and sort your children out? Now it becomes an opportunity in our hearts to show God's love. And we saw and we noticed because we were looking around, not running through the store and checking our phone every 5 seconds just because we have to wait. When we're present, we notice the workmate who's just a little off, right? Most people put their masks up and they get through the day because they've got to get through the day. And we don't notice because we're too busy getting through our own day. But if we went a little slower and we had our eyes up a little more, we might notice. And instead of just rushing off to the next task, we might have a moment of opportunity to share the love of Jesus with them. When we're present, looking at the world around us instead of a tiny little 6-inch screen in our pockets, we become blown away by the amazing work of God's creation. And it calls us back to Him and to His purposes. And when we're present, we notice God at work everywhere. So that's our challenge this week as we finish this series. While we await eternity, where God's creation comes into fullness in order, where heaven and earth become close. Yes, we're waiting for that, but we don't need to wait to work on being transformed. We're called right now to grow in patience, to grow in living slowly, so that God's Spirit might grow in us, and that His purposes might be fulfilled in us, because we've actually given Him a bit of time so that we could see. Does that sound uncomfortable? Does it sound achievable? Going to go to New World this afternoon. There's going to be one massively long line. All the Baptists have gone to do their groceries today, right? Pick all the lines, right? Don't just chat amongst yourselves. Like, come on, commit to this thing. Heavenly Father, we thank you. Thank you that you don't leave us where we are. Thank you that you are at work all around us. Thank you that you've called us to be your agents of change in the world, to be your agents of light, in life, in love, to live the example set to us by your Son. Thank you for that opportunity and that privilege. And God, would you give us courage this week? Would you give us boldness? Would we maybe be able to clear out our heads just enough to hear your Spirit to say, put the phone down, to say, pick that line, to say, go stand by that person. Would you give us strength to walk slowly with you, that we might fulfill your purposes? Because ultimately we pray, your kingdom come, and your will be done. We lay our plans and our purposes and the things that we already know we need to get done this afternoon and this week. We lay them at your feet. We put them down. And we say, show us your way, God. Thank you for your presence with us, God.